In the spring of 1218, a merchant named Inalchuq watched 450 traders walk into his city. He did not know he was looking at the reason 5 million people were about to die. He did not know that the man who sent them, a man he had never met, who lived 2,000 miles away, behind mountains his people couldn't even name, would soon stand outside his gates personally. Not to negotiate, not to threaten, to finish something. By the time this story ends, the richest empire in the Islamic world will be gone. Not defeated, gone. Its capital will be a field of skulls stacked by category: men, women, children. Separate pyramids. The Mongols counted. This is the story of how one governor's decision to kill some merchants started a chain reaction that some historians call the deadliest single war in human history before the 20th century. And it all came down to one number that you're going to watch grow, again and again, until it becomes something almost impossible to comprehend. Right now, the count stands at 450. Remember that number. It's about to multiply by a factor of 10,000.
Here's what almost nobody puts in the thumbnail. Genghis Khan didn't want this war. By 1218, he already controlled more territory than Alexander the Great ever conquered in his lifetime. He'd spent 2 decades unifying the Mongolian steppe, something no one had managed in centuries, and he was now deep into a brutal, ongoing campaign against the Jin dynasty in northern China. The man had every reason in the world to avoid opening a second front. To the west sat the Khwarezmian Empire. Modern-day Iran, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Afghanistan rolled into one staggeringly wealthy state. Its capital cities, Samarkand and Bokhara, were among the largest and richest in the entire world. Its ruler, Sultan Muhammad II, called himself the Second Alexander. He commanded what may have been the single largest army on the planet at the time. Some estimates put his total mobilized strength north of 400,000 men, though historians still argue over the real number. Genghis Khan sent him a message that, translated across 8 centuries, still reads like a man trying very hard not to start a fight. He proposed trade. Mongol goods, gold, fur, jade, for Khwarezmian silk and fine cloth. He reportedly referred to the Sultan as one of his most favored allies. Genghis Khan, the man history remembers as an apocalypse on horseback, opened this relationship asking for nothing but commerce. The Sultan agreed. In 1218, Genghis Khan organized a massive trade caravan. Some sources count over 450 merchants and guards, an enormous, expensive, good faith gesture, and sent it toward the Khwarezmian border city of Otrar. It would never leave. The governor of Otrar was a man named Inalchuq. Some chroniclers call him Ghiyas ad-Din. What matters is what he did next. He looked at this caravan, hundreds of merchants, mountains of trade goods, no military escort to speak of, and he decided they were spies. Maybe he believed it. Maybe he wanted the goods for himself. Maybe he was testing how far he could push the most dangerous man on the continent without consequence. 800 years later, we still don't know his real motive. What we know is what he ordered. Every member of that caravan was arrested. And then, on his command, every single one of them was executed. Historical accounts say only one man escaped to carry the news back across 2,000 miles of steppe to Genghis Khan. On-screen graphic, body count, 450, 451. The survivor doesn't change the math. The dead are already counted. Now here's the part that should terrify you more than the massacre itself. Genghis Khan's first move wasn't an army. It was a letter. He sent a follow-up delegation, by most accounts, 3 ambassadors, directly to Sultan Muhammad II himself. Not to declare war. To ask formally, diplomatically, for one thing: hand over the governor of Otrar for punishment, and this ends here. This was the last peaceful exit ramp in the entire war. The Sultan had it in his hands. He chose differently. To understand what happened next, you need to understand one thing about the world Genghis Khan came from. Among the Mongols, an ambassador was untouchable, sacred. You could be at war with a man's entire civilization and his envoy would still ride home alive, because killing a messenger wasn't just murder. It was a declaration that there were no rules left between your peoples at all. Sultan Muhammad II had the senior Muslim envoy beheaded. The other ambassadors, Mongols, he didn't kill. He did something he likely thought was the lesser punishment. He had their beards shaved off. To a Mongol warrior, the beard wasn't vanity. It was identity, masculinity, status, stripped in public, in front of witnesses, as a calculated humiliation. He sent these disfigured men back across the desert as a message. This is what I think of you, and everything you represent. He had just executed roughly 450 unarmed merchants, beheaded a diplomat, and mutilated the Khan's official representatives. And somewhere in his palace in Samarkand, Sultan Muhammad II believed he had won the exchange. On-screen graphic, body count, 451, 452. He had no idea what he had actually done. He had handed Genghis Khan something no diplomat, no army, no fortress could ever provide: complete justification, in the eyes of every nation watching, to erase him. What happened over the next 2 years is, according to multiple military historians, one of the most devastatingly efficient campaigns in pre-modern history. Genghis Khan didn't just send an army. He sent an army that had spent years absorbing Chinese siege technology, trebuchets, fire-lance weapons, mobile siege towers, grafted onto the fastest cavalry force on the planet. The Khwarezmians had never faced an enemy that combined steppe speed with city-breaking machinery. Their entire defensive doctrine assumed the Mongols would come through one mountain pass. Genghis split his forces and came through several, simultaneously, from directions the Sultan's generals considered impossible. The Sultan made his second fatal mistake. Instead of meeting the Mongols in one decisive battle where his numbers might have mattered, he scattered his forces to defend every city individually. It felt cautious. It was actually a death sentence for every single garrison, because it meant the Mongols could surround and annihilate each city alone, with overwhelming local force, again and again. Otrar fell first, 5 months of siege. When the walls finally broke, Genghis Khan had one specific request for his commanders: take the governor alive. Inalchuq did not surrender easily. Accounts describe him retreating to the citadel with his last loyal men, and when his weapons ran out, he climbed to the top of the fortress and began throwing roof tiles down at the Mongols below, fighting to the literal end with whatever was left in his hands. It wasn't enough. He was captured, and his execution was designed to answer his crime with grotesque precision. This was the man who had killed merchants over alleged greed for their goods. So the Mongols held him down and poured molten silver into his eyes and ears. The man who took everything from those traitors died, choking on liquid metal. Now here's where this stops being a war story and becomes something closer to a warning. Nishapur, in modern-day Iran, was one of the great cultural capitals of the Islamic world, a city of scholars, poets, and merchants, home to somewhere around 170,000 people. When the Mongols approached, the city's defenders made a decision that would prove catastrophic. During a skirmish, a stray arrow struck and killed one of Genghis Khan's sons-in-law, a commander named Tokashar. The city surrendered shortly after. Under any normal medieval logic, surrender meant survival. Genghis Khan's wife, the widow's grief carried directly to the Khan, was given control of the city's fate as compensation for her husband's death. What followed in April 1221 was, according to multiple historical accounts, almost incomprehensible in scale. The population was driven out into the surrounding plain. Every single person was ordered killed, and the Mongols didn't simply kill them. They counted them methodically, by separating the dead into 3 groups and building the remains into towering pyramids. 1 mountain of skulls for the men, 1 for the women, 1 for the children. Even the city's animals, dogs, cats, anything living, were exterminated on Genghis Khan's direct order so that nothing in Nishapur would remain to tell its own story except silence. Roughly 170,000 people. Some chroniclers, writing decades later with the exaggeration typical of medieval record-keeping, claimed numbers in the hundreds of thousands or more. Modern historians are skeptical of the highest figures, but even the most conservative estimates describe one of the deadliest single massacres of the medieval world. On-screen graphic, body count, 100, 000 plus, 270, 000 plus. Bokhara fell. Samarkand fell, defended by what chroniclers described as a garrison of tens of thousands, broken in days. Urgent fell. Herat fell. Merv, once one of the largest cities on Earth, fell, and its death toll is debated by historians to this day, with some medieval estimates running into the hundreds of thousands, though modern scholarship treats those numbers with real caution given how chroniclers of the era tended to inflate catastrophe for effect. And what happened to the man whose ego started all of this? Sultan Muhammad II, the second Alexander, commander of what may have been the largest army in the world? He ran. Genghis Khan personally dispatched two of his finest generals, Subutai and Jeeb, with a single mission: do not let the Sultan rest. Don't let him regroup an army. Don't let him reach an ally. Hunt him. They did exactly that, chasing him for hundreds of miles across his own collapsing empire, never giving him the breathing room to rebuild a single meaningful force. The man who once commanded hundreds of thousands of soldiers died alone, sick, and stripped of nearly everything, on a tiny island in the Caspian Sea. Some accounts say he died of pleurisy. Others say grief. By that point, it barely mattered which. His empire was already being erased behind him faster than the news of his death could travel. His son, Jalal al-Din, tried to rally the remnants and actually managed a real victory against a Mongol detachment at the Battle of Parwan, proof that the Khwarezmians weren't incompetent, just outmatched on a scale that no contingency plan could have survived. Genghis Khan crushed those remaining forces personally not long after, at the Battle of the Indus. On-screen graphic, body count, 270,000 plus, estimates ranging into the millions across the full campaign. Visual, return to the cold open imagery, the original caravan, now empty desert. So, let's go back to where we started. A caravan of 450 traders, walking into a city, on what they believed was a routine trade mission. Historians still debate the exact body count of the Khwarezmian campaign. The chronicles of this era are not statisticians, they're storytellers, and storytellers exaggerate. But even the most cautious modern estimates describe a civilization of millions reduced to rubble, mass graves, and skull pyramids within roughly 2 years. Some of the cities destroyed in this campaign, Merv, Nishapur among them, took centuries to recover their former populations. Some never fully did. One governor's decision. One sultan's pride. 2 ambassadors with their beards shaved off in a moment he thought was harmless theater. That was the entire spark. If there's one thing this war should leave you with, it's this. In an empire built on speed, brutality, and absolute consequence, there was no such thing as a small insult. There was only the moment before the reckoning, and the moment after. The reckoning came for Khwarezmia in less than 3 years. The world never built an empire that size again without remembering exactly why it fell. On-screen final graphic, final body count, EST millions. Started with 450. If you want to see what happens when this exact war machine turns toward Europe next, that's a story for another video. Subscribe so you don't miss it.